topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert Show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from experts on such topics as legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to our experts in community association law, estate planning law, tax relief, Medicare, public insurance adjusters, neuropathy treatment, business brokers, and personal injury law, along with many other topics. Now here's your host for the last 17 years, Steve O.
Good afternoon, California. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show. Excuse me while I just make a little cosmetic change right here. It's funny, we never know exactly how the video is going to show up, but a long time ago I used to see these commercials on TV for mesothelioma, and by the way, it took me over a year and a half to be able to pronounce that. And I was wondering, what is mesothelioma, because they never really explained it. And I said, you know what, people are actually asking for a show like this. And we found, I am telling you, one of the top attorneys in the United States. This show started off as a California show, became so popular, we had to move it to the whole United States. This is now one of our few national shows that we do. And I got to tell you, because I see the numbers every month, when attorney Michael Mandelbrot comes on our show, the numbers blow me away. Like I was just telling Michael before the show, we had right at 1,000 likes already. Well, we're just starting the show now. We're at 1.4K. They don't give us the exact number, but that's okay. That's just on TikTok. But I wanted to say this because I started looking at other podcasts around the country for mesothelioma, and they all average about 100 to 300 views. This show constantly gets over 1,500 views, sometimes over 2,000 views. So we have got the best show when it comes to mesothelioma. We're going to educate you today, so you don't have to worry about what is this, because for all you know, you might even have a relative who is suffering from this. So let me bring on the top attorney. And he might not want me saying that, but I'm going to say that for mesothelioma. Let's welcome attorney Michael Mandelbrot.
Thank you, Stephen, for the very, very kind introduction. I really appreciate it. It's always great to see you every month. To all our TikTok listeners, happy to be here. Legal questions you have about asbestos and asbestos cases, you've come to the right guy. I've been representing victims of asbestos diseases for about the past 30 years, and that includes victims of mesothelioma, victims of lung cancer, and of course, victims of asbestosis, what some would consider to be one of the most mild diseases. But I'm also here to give you what I would like to say is unfiltered, honest content about this litigation. Maybe some things that other attorneys might not tell you. But I want to give all of the listeners and everybody who's viewing on TikTok the best information about asbestos litigation. And sure, if you've got questions, related questions, I'm happy to try and answer those as well.
Well, Michael, first I'll tell people how long you've been in practice.
Well, truthfully, since the day I became a lawyer and I graduated law school in 1990, late 94, took the bar in late 94, and was sworn in January of 95. So it has been, oh, and so right when I started, I was representing victims of asbestos diseases. I don't want to say I've got a specialty, but there are a lot of areas of law I don't know a lot about, but this is one that I know a lot about, and that is asbestos litigation. So it's been about 30 years that I've been a lawyer and 30 years that I've been helping victims.
I want to share this. We talk about it on every show, but I'm still blown away. We have, and maybe I'm wrong how I'm identifying, but I go by things that I've heard in the industry. We were contacted by the largest mesothelioma law firm. I think they're out of the Baltimore area. Doesn't matter, but they wanted a show like Michael's. They loved his show so much, and we don't have an oak. We only have Michael. But the thing he did, which we never get, we get calls all the time. People going, "Hey, your expert doesn't know what they're talking about. I can do a better job." This guy raved about Michael, the information, and I just thought, God, coming from I'll say one of the largest firms in the country, how they complimented you, Michael.
I appreciated that. And a lot of these firms have been in business much longer than I have. Um, but I've always, preferred to remain small so I can give individual attention to clients. I really do respect some of these large firms, but if you are a victim of asbestos diseases, my strong recommendation is to work with a smaller firm where you are going to get individual attention. So I think it's an honor to hear that, Stephen, and it's always an honor to hear compliments. So
That's why I
thank you.
always mention it. So, Michael, we're going to educate people today. I got to tell you, I don't have a hat on, but if we did, my hat's off to you. Michael represents people. There's no cure for mesothelioma. And basically, I don't know if I'm putting this right, but his clients normally will pass away. I don't know how ever to say that. So, and Michael's the kind of guy who gets a relationship with his clients. He's got such a big heart, but he knows in the background they're not going to be around for long, right, Michael?
Yes, it is very true. Mesothelioma is one of the most insidious, aggressive cancers um, that is possible. It's fatal literally 100% of the time. And what makes it unique from other cancers, where they don't know what causes the disease, like for example, someone has lung cancer, we argue it's caused by asbestos, but the other side might argue it's caused by smoking or chemicals or fumes or something else. But mesothelioma is very unique in that not only is it terminal 100% of the time, but we also know what causes mesothelioma, and that is exposure to asbestos. And that is what all of the experts will say. And again, I'm not a scientific expert, but that is, and I'm not a medical doctor, but that's what all of them will say. The only known cause of mesothelioma is exposure to asbestos, period. Okay. So when somebody gets mesothelioma, not only do we know that they've got a very serious disease, but yes, we also know it is terminal and we've got to act quickly. So the answer to your question is yes. And it's not just our mesothelioma patients who pass. And I did want to add one thing, over time with mesothelioma clients, and this happened to me last week, we don't only grow very close to the client, but we grow very close to the spouse as well. And since many of these families are elderly, say over 80, many of them, 75, 80, many of these couples, they've been married a very, very long time. And typically, when they do pass away, the first person that, well, I don't want to say the first person, but one of the first people that that wife calls is me to let me know. And the relationship with the wife becomes very similar to the relationship of the individual who had mesothelioma. So, we still are very close with the wives. And what makes it unfortunate when all our client or a lot of our clients are very elderly is when not only does the victim of mesothelioma pass away, but what happened to me last week when his wife of 60 years also suddenly passed away. And so oftentimes we don't only get hit with the passing of our client, but oftentimes, if they are still alive, the passing of the spouse too. So
And,
yeah, it's
and Michael,
oftentimes a double whammy.
and I got to tell people, you do so much legwork before you even realize your first dime, if you do.
Yeah. I like to tell people that oftentimes we don't act as lawyers, we act as investigators because our cases are built on exposures to asbestos. If our clients have an asbestos disease, it is our job to determine the various ways they were exposed to asbestos. And it's not just the biggest or the largest exposure that somebody had. Say somebody worked at a refinery for 10 years, but they worked at a shipyard for 2 years. That 2 years of exposure is just as important as the 10 years. It is a significant exposure that contributed to the disease. So, for example, in that situation, on the 2 years they worked at the shipyard as investigators and the time and the money that we spend, we have to determine, of course, what ships they worked on when they were in the shipyard, when each of those ships were built, when each of those ships were overhauled, because more asbestos products would come onto the ship during the overhaul, every repair they had, who manufactured all of the equipment on all of those ships, because those are potential defendants. Now, over the 30 years, I have compiled and saved a database of a lot of this information. So, for example, any refinery or any Navy ship, I can answer those questions almost immediately. But a lot of times we might have somebody who worked at a site that we haven't worked up before. And there's a tremendous amount of investigation that goes into it. And that doesn't count retaining experts for trial and the other tens of thousands of dollars, oftentimes well over 100 before we get to trial. But what I do want to make clear is in those 30 years, we have never sent out a bill to a client. You see those commercials, no fee unless we win. Well,
Mhm.
most of our clients are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, blue collar workers, people who've worked in power plants and refineries and construction. And those people don't have money for a lawyer, and nor do we expect it. As lawyers, we take the position, hey, we're going to do just fine on this case by getting a percentage of the settlements. It's called a, and I always make sure that vast majority of that percentage goes to the clients because they're the ones who deserve it. But all of that work and all of that time that goes into it before we see a dime, um, clients never have to worry about seeing a bill from us. And I think that's a very important thing. And it makes it very easy for clients to not worry about their case and to focus more on their treatment and their disease.
Well, I'm looking at all the questions both from YouTube and TikTok, and also looks like Spotify. Anyway, there's so many people asking the same questions. Here's one though is a great question. Uh, I don't know where your office is in California. I'm located in San Diego. How do you handle a client that is not in the same city as you?
Great question. Just like I mentioned, we don't send out bills. We also don't expect our clients to travel. Our clients who have a malignancy, a cancer, either lung cancer or mesothelioma, I'm in my car or in a plane the next day. Okay. I want to sit down with them, talk to them about these cases. I'm not sticking retainers and questionnaires in their face. I just want them to meet me and know what's possible. California, we represent people, and truthfully, we represent people throughout the country, but we obviously located and licensed in California. Our best cases, our most valuable cases are without question for California clients. And that's not just because they're better cases, but that's because the laws in California are more beneficial to asbestos victims. We can sue more clients. So San Diego cases we handle all the time. I think the other question might be like an out of state case. Well, we obviously work with a lot of lawyers, co-counsel, so I make sure that a victim is with the best lawyer and is going to get the best recovery if I can't handle it. But what we also see is that many clients, they may live in Florida, New York, or outside of California, but at some point in their lifetime, their exposures to asbestos was in California. So, for example, if somebody was in the Navy or the Air Force and they were stationed in California and had exposure to asbestos in 1962, and then were stationed somewhere else and never set foot again in California, that is a case that we can bring in California, even though that person's not a California resident, even though they don't live in California, even though maybe none of the witnesses are in California, because they had exposures to asbestos in California. That is a California case. So, San Diego, we can handle those easily. Out of state, also either in a car or on a plane the next day to meet those people. But it may not be us handling them. We may have to co-counsel with other lawyers if those people did not set foot in or have exposures in California.
This is from Mary in Baltimore. We do get a lot of people from the Maryland area. She said, first of all, she says, God bless you. She said, I don't know if you ever saw the movie, Aaron. We talk about this, Aaron Brockovich, but when I hear you talking, I think about that movie. Is that really true? Does that coincide with mesothelioma cases?
It's very, very similar in a lot of ways. That was, you know, I've got to say, asbestos is far, far worse because, realize this is a product that we know causes a terminal disease, asbestos. It's been essentially banned in the US except for very, very select uses. But still, in other countries, they're using asbestos for construction, in pharmaceutical products like cosmetics, the talc. Like I guarantee any of the listeners out there, if you type in asbestos children's crayons, asbestos makeup, what's going to come up is articles from the last year about them finding asbestos in these products. So
Wow.
while asbestos has been banned effectively in the United States for building and construction products, in other countries it has not. And of course, the testing and of products is not as great in, these third world countries that we do buy a lot from than they are here. And we still end up with products that have asbestos in them even now. Is it similar? Yes. Different type of cancer, but I think this is worse because this is nationwide. That was localized to one particular area. And again, I've got to go back. I know my wife has seen it a few times. I think it was the water in Aaron Brockovich
Yes.
was the issue. And I could be
Yes.
wrong, but that was at least a localized issue to that area where with asbestos, there isn't a place in the country it hasn't touched. If there is a building that was built before 1972, I'd give it a 98% chance, unless it is a all steel building, that there's asbestos in there. Whether it's in the flooring, the popcorn ceiling, the drywall, the vinyl asbestos tile, of course, the insulation, the boilers, the valves, and the list goes on of all the products that had it before 1972. So while similar to Aaron Brockovich, in a lot of ways, a terminal cancer caused by a toxin. This, I think, is far worse. There isn't a place in the country it hasn't touched.
Well, I have seen the movie probably 20 times. And one of the things that I got out of this, these companies knew about it and they're still out there fighting it. And I remember when they sat down at the attorney's table, and one of the, I think it was Aaron, said, here's some water we got from your pond. Drink this. And she wouldn't drink it, but they were still sitting there lowballing. Is that how it works with mesothelioma?
100% yes. And especially in the early days of these cases, you mentioned Aaron Brockovich. There's a movie called and a book called A Civil Action by Paul Brodeur, Brodeur. And it's very, very similar. It's almost when I read it, to me, it was a legal thriller about how these companies hid the hazards of asbestos and how they were finally uncovered by the early lawyers handling these cases in the 1980s. The unquestionable answer is yes, they hid the hazards. Once the hazards started becoming known, because they were all members of these different industrial organizations and societies where they talked about the hazards of asbestos, their suppliers gave them notification about the hazards. Many of them knew way back in the 1930s, either knew or should have known, and they just pulled out the broom and took the information and just swept it right under the rug. And in this book, it really shows about how it was uncovered in the course of a lawsuit against Johns Manville and related insurance companies, I believe Metropolitan Life, who had billions and billions of reasons to conceal the hazards of asbestos. And not surprisingly, Johns Manville, along with 60 other asbestos companies, are now bankrupt specifically because of their supply, distribution, and manufacture of asbestos-related products and the injuries and death that it caused the users. So, Paul Brodeur, A Civil Action, a great read.
Here's this is, on TikTok, Michael, they don't use their name. They've got like handles. This is from Fuzzy from Houston, Texas. Hey, I'm really enjoying your show. I normally only stay on podcasts for about 5 minutes. You've had my attention since the show went on. My question is how do you know the difference between mesothelioma and COPD?
It's a great question, and it doesn't start really with the lawyers. It starts with the doctors, because typically what's going to happen is someone's either going to have a pain in their back or their lungs, or of course, shortness of breath. That is the classic sequence we see. And when somebody goes to their primary care physician and they say they have shortness of breath, this is one of the most unfortunate things that I've seen in medicine in this litigation. But when someone presents those symptoms to their doctor, 99% of the time, the first question the doctor asks is, did you smoke cigarettes? If they have breathing problems. The first question is never, were you exposed to asbestos? The first question is always, did you smoke cigarettes?
Ah,
And immediately, many doctors are thinking breathing problems, cigarettes, COPD, because COPD is caused typically by smoking. Okay, asbestos doesn't cause COPD, it causes a similar manifesting disease, but a completely different disease known as asbestosis, which is also severe breathing problems like you'd see with COPD. So it starts with the primary care physician. The key there is, does that primary care physician take a CT scan or just a simple x ray? If they take a CT scan, they can see two things. One, they can see more scarring or profusion or fibrosis than they can on an x ray. But the second thing that they can see, which can lead towards a mesothelioma diagnosis, is something on the surface of the lung, something odd. Obviously, maybe a tumor. It may not be. One thing we do see a lot and would have me very concerned for people out there is fluid buildup on the lung. Because when there's fluid buildup on the lung, the first thing the doctors will always point to is a pneumonia, and they'll drain the lung. And that is an opportunity at that point to do a biopsy. A lot of them do not at that point. If that fluid builds up again a second time, um, a doctor should do a biopsy. The only way to diagnose mesothelioma is through a biopsy and a pathologist reviewing that tissue sample to determine if it is mesothelioma. A biopsy and a pathology report. And it would be the same with lung cancer. Cannot be diagnosed on an x-ray or a CT scan. That is how you would diagnose asbestosis. The unfortunate thing, like I said, is many doctors, if you go in and they don't see any cancer and you have breathing problems, the first thing they're going to point to is smoking. And it's almost, and it shouldn't be this way, but it's almost important for the patient to tell them, hey, I had exposures to asbestos. Could this be causing my breathing problems? But that is what I tell my clients to ask their treating physicians, because a lot of treating physicians, like I said, they're pointing to smoking every single time.
ooh, this is from an attorney on YouTube. Hey, I've been listening to your show. I don't practice in the area you're in, but I'm curious. Do you know when someone contacts you if you have a case or not?
100% of the time, typically within 5 minutes. I'll know if there is active insolvent defendants. I'll know if there is bankrupt trust funds that we can access. I'll know if there is identifiable asbestos defendants or companies at the job sites they were at. And of course, I'll have to ask some medical questions about, why they're calling. But I welcome calls from anybody with questions. Hey, do you think I have a case? Hey, I was diagnosed with this. Hey, what do I need to determine if I have a case? But it's very quick for me. It wasn't early in my career. But yes, now very quickly I can tell.
I have to say this, Michael. I've done so much due diligence in this field. And one of the things I've learned is there's law firms out there that they say they specialize in this area, but you look at the areas of their practice and you'll see personal injury, workers' comp, bankruptcy, family law, all different areas of law. Michael, this is the only area of law that you handle.
Yeah, it is the only area that I handle. And I shake my head because you're right. You've got lawyers who've never handled these cases before. I think even more frustrating for me being somebody in the state with the best cases, California, is out of state lawyers who might have 7 different asbestos website, asbestosdisease.com, californialawyers.com, California asbestos lawyers. And they might have 7, 10 different asbestos websites, and they're not even based in California. And so that, along with outside firms who really don't know about California litigation, since I've started, we've had at least 10 firms from Texas, 7 from New York, and various others come to California, and just these large firms, and set up shop and tell people, hey, we can adequately represent you, because they just want to group them with all their other mesothelioma cases. And it's not the case, but it is something that we see. It's frustrating. Um, but you just keep moving forward and representing victims.
Michael, is there a wide range of payout? I know every case is different, but is there like an average low end, high end?
It's funny you mention it. Because it's something that I've been talking with my co-counsel a lot about recently as we evaluate cases that come in. Because as I said, we can get a very good idea of what a case is worth when it comes in. And it's funny how in today's asbestos world, where somebody was exposed to asbestos and how they were exposed makes as big of difference as anything. And you can see all of the ranges. So for example, I'm going to take a lung cancer case. Say somebody has lung cancer, same disease, and they happen to work in Oregon in, we'll call it a refinery. Okay. There isn't a lot of contractor defendants we can sue. We can file some trust claims for that victim. Questionable whether or not we'll file a lawsuit. Maybe $20,000-$30,000 from asbestos trust funds in today's world. If we're able to litigate, maybe another 100,000. Okay. And that would be on the lower end of cases we litigate. Now take somebody same age, same disease, lung cancer, but this guy, he was in the Navy for a couple of years. When he left, he went to the Merchant Marines, worked for various ship owners down in boiler rooms for about 5 years, and then, say, went to a refinery and worked for 2 years, and then got injured and retired at age 50. And that same guy has lung cancer as the other guy. That same case that we're litigating right now is going to take in well over $1 million. And that's a lung cancer case. Mesothelioma cases, since these are the most valuable cases, you might see between, say, 500,000 on the low end, 10 to 15 million on the high end. And that's just settlements. Verdicts are coming in 20 million, 30 million, 50 million. These aren't paid right away. They're always appealed, and you go through that process. But in settlements, so lung cancer, let's say the range 50,000 to 1.2 million. Mesothelioma cases, probably 500,000 to 12 million. Asbestosis cases, and this is why most lawyers will not even handle these cases. All older lawyers who used to handle these cases, who started with asbestosis cases, don't handle them anymore because they can't make enough money from them. Maybe as low as 5,000 and as high as maybe 75 to 100,000 on an asbestosis case. So you can see there is a very wide range, and it's almost always dependent upon where they were exposed to asbestos. Where?
This is from Gilly in Houston. They want to know, how long does a case normally last?
It's a great question. And I'm going to have to pick it apart a little bit. First question, I think the better question is, how long before clients start seeing money in their
Yeah.
cases? Oftentimes, quite quickly. These cases aren't like a normal case where you get one large settlement, like a car accident case, and you settle with the defendant and the case is over. We might have 60 defendants in the case, and we might have filed claims against 40 different trust funds. And that's 100 different opportunities for recovery from different companies. So not all of them settle at once. Some get dismissed, some settle, and maybe some are around for trial. If a case settles, we're talking about maybe, depends, mesothelioma as quickly as 9 months to a year from start to finish. Now, when I say that, the case always remains open in case one of the trust funds gets additional money. So we leave these cases open. Maybe a family member also gets sick. We oftentimes see like two brothers who work together get sick. So we always leave these cases open. But 1 year, lung cancer and asbestosis cases, they take longer from start to finish. But in all cases, clients usually do start seeing money within 90 to 120 days. And that's
Wow.
because there's these trust funds that we have. And at this point, there's defendants. And I'm not going to give the names, but for example, a big defendant might say, look, we've litigated 80 cases in the past. This is what we've settled for, on average in those 80 cases. How about we both save costs? If you file the complaint against us, we will pay you that same amount right at the start of the case. And so there are certain defendants, we'll call them informal defendants, who we may see money from very quickly as well. So there is potential to see money quickly. Cases, I never actually close a case. The litigation, though, may end within about a year on a meso and about 3 years on a lung cancer.
We said at the beginning of the show that most of these people must all pass away. What happens to that money when they pass away? Does it go to the wife or the children? What happens to it?
Well, it's something that I'm dealing with right now. And for me, this money is to honor the loss of somebody. The law is very clear on who is entitled to settlements. It's heirs. And heirs is defined as spouse and either biological or adopted children. Okay, one of the two. And those are the heirs. But here's the problem we see. Maybe somebody was on a second or a third marriage when they died. Maybe they had children from multiple wives. So you've got all of these kids. The ideal situation is when you have, a good, what I want to say, a nuclear family of four, a wife and two kids. somebody passes away, what we always do is we ask them to sign, the heirs, the wife and the kids, what's known as a sharing agreement. How would you like the settlement shared? And if they can agree, the heirs, then it's never an issue. And in a situation like that, it's usually maybe one half of the settlements goes to the spouse and the kids split the other half of the settlement. I think that's a fair split. But oftentimes, what you have is the stepchildren saying, or the younger children, saying those kids didn't talk to him. She was always mean to my dad. He was mean. They had, or maybe even, that lady hasn't talked to my dad in 20 years. They always wanted to get divorced. You get that. And that's what causes disputes and makes things problematic. The answer to the question is the money still goes to the heirs. But when they can't agree on how the money should be split, we as lawyers just throw up our hands, file a motion with the court, and let the judge decide based on all of the facts. And if the parties want to appear and argue why they should get more, and I will say this has never happened, because when it comes to settlement monies, I think a lot of these people take a step back and, they do realize this money's to honor somebody who passed away. Maybe if they weren't that close, they'll say, you know what? 10% is better than zero. I'm okay with 10%. I don't need a third or 25%. I am going through a tough situation right now where the siblings, the mom is still alive, but the two kids don't get along. And one of them got the check or saw the check and didn't tell and it's just a big headache. And they wanted me to write other checks and FedEx, and I'm not doing it because the law is very clear. Heirs are entitled to settlements. Heirs, spouse, biological or adopted children.
Wow. Here's a good question. This is from Greg. Greg's in Sacramento, wants to know, is asbestos still being used?
Hey, Greg, you're not far from me, by the way. You're about probably an hour and a half. And, Sacramento was I like to think, one of the hotbeds. If you look at historically, and I'm not sure why, you do see a high incidence of mesothelioma cases out of Sacramento. I think a lot
Wow.
of Bay Area people may have moved to Sacramento. A lot of the construction was done stucco and drywall on a lot of the homes. That may be why. But as far as his question goes, the answer is we still do. It's effectively outlawed by the EPA, but it's still being found in products imported from other countries. As I mentioned, we see it in cosmetics. The big thing that I've talked about in a lot of my shows is baby powder. You don't see Johnson and Johnson's baby powder on the shelf anymore. And there's a reason why you don't, because it was contaminated with asbestos, and that was recently. So the answer is no, it's not, I think, intentionally used in the US. I'm certain that it is used outside of the US, specifically in third world countries, and oftentimes contaminates the products that do come to the US, including construction products.
This is does a lawsuit recovery impact a military disability?
Absolutely not. There's and a related question is, do I get taxed on any recovery? And the answer to that is no as well. It is not considered income. If you got $1 million in settlements from asbestos companies, that $1 million goes right into your pocket. And
Wow.
that's the same for the heirs. Okay. It is not considered income in the tax code. I believe it's for personal injury settlements, and there's a different box on the tax forms for personal injury, or it goes under other or something else, so it is untaxed. Doesn't affect military benefits, doesn't affect VA benefits, like say you're getting VA for hearing loss or even VA for asbestos. You can file VA and get full value for mesothelioma, and file a mesothelioma case and still get full value. No impact on any of those, and it's all tax-free recovery.
Michael, we have got such an intelligent audience. I'm going to use this probably for our last question. He said, first of all, I want to tell you that your show is so much better than some stupid 60-second commercial. Thank you for your time and patience. I'm curious. I heard that popcorn ceiling can cause asbestos. Is that true?
The answer to that question is yes. And I do want to thank you for that, because as I mentioned, these lawyers, these nationwide lawyers, they're the ones spending tens of millions of dollars for this 60-second commercial. Free book, mesothelioma, call
Yes.
our office. Free meso book, mesothelioma, $30 billion. Call me, call our office. Okay. Those aren't the lawyers that the people out there want to call. So, that would be the first part of, and maybe it wasn't even a question. And what was the second part of the question?
Just
Oh,
want to know.
popcorn ceiling.
Yes.
Absolutely. Those were made
Okay.
by a company that many of you have heard of. And I think it's the same exact company from the Aaron Brockovich movie, uniquely,
Wow.
W.R. Grace.
Oh, yeah.
Grace it was the company who manufactured those. And what's interesting about those, the product was mixed and blended in Libby, Montana. And the W.R. Grace manufacturing plant was like on a mountain or something. And so all of the dust coming out of the plant was coming off of the mountain all over the town. And not only are those popcorn ceilings littered with asbestos, but if you look up Libby, Montana and asbestos, the sandboxes, the schools, half of the residents, I think, got asbestosis. Many got diagnosed with cancer. And it was all related to those popcorn ceilings, which were those products were then used and utilized all over the country. I think we've all lived in a house that had those popcorn ceilings. If you've got, I know we got to go, Steve, but if you've got them, encapsulate them, put a coating over them so they're not dusty, or unfortunately, you're going to have to pay more expensive than it typically would be to have it removed. They got to wet it down, wear special suits, get you out of the house, that sort of thing. So the long answer is absolutely yes. One of the worst and most toxic ones, and I think W.R. Grace actually, by filing for bankruptcy, escaped a lot of liability with this one.
Hmm. Well, I want to tell you, Michael, people love your show. We've got over 7.7 thousand likes on here just from TikTok. That's not YouTube or iHeart, all of our 7 other platforms. This is a big subject, Michael. And I'm so glad that we could bring this. Michael's with us every month. And we usually do his show on a Thursday or a Friday. We will let you know. Michael, tell people how they can reach you.
I'm going to give them the direct line, my direct line, which is 415. That's Bay Area, 307-2119. My office's website, if anyone would like to look me up, is at mesothelioma.pro. And we do have an 800 number, 970-DUST. 970-DUST. So please, anybody, call me anytime, and I appreciate the show, Stephen, and it's always great seeing you.
We appreciate you, Michael. Take care. We'll see you next month.
Sounds great, Stephen. Have a great day.
You too. That's Michael, attorney Michael Mandelbrot. Again, his phone number is 415-895-5175. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow with you at 2 o'clock Eastern time with our tax relief bankruptcy show tomorrow. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful day and great weekend. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.